So we had twins, and that made us buy a 7-seater because when you have two children, you kind of get away with like an average hatchback, and even three, you can fit three across the back seat, that's fine. As soon as you have four, you have to go into that whole boot seat thing. So we bought one, but it was a real old banger. It had loads of miles on the clock. We think it had been a taxi before, and it was never brilliant, but it sat on the drive for about 9 months in COVID lockdown because couldn't go anywhere outside of Birmingham, so we really weren't using it at all. And there was one day I was going to meet my parents when you could meet like two other people or something out in the countryside. So I thought, I don't know if it'll start, but I tried it. It started. I was like, oh, great. You could go out and see my parents. We got to a mile down the road from where we were going to a National Trust place, and it just died. So my parents had to rescue us and the RAC or whatever it was that we had. And we took it to a local garage, and they said, maybe 1.5 to 2k repair on the engine, which wasn't really surprised because it had always been a bit dodgy, and it just had all come to a head at this point. So we said, well, we're about to head into another lockdown at this point. This is like December 2020. Let's just sell it.
Hello, welcome to the Better Streets Birmingham podcast. Today I'm chatting with Ruth about the choice of not using a car for day-to-day life. So thank you very much, Ruth, for joining me today.
No problem.
I'll start with the admission that I also don't use a car for day-to-day life, and that was a choice my family made a while ago. So what journeys do we make day to day?
Okay, for us, so I'm a mum with 4 kids, so a lot of my journeys revolve around family life and them as well as myself and my husband. So it's things like school run, work when I go into the office, although I do sometimes work from home, activities after school, so things like swim club and scouts, there are 2 main ones. But with 4 children, that's, only need 2 things an evening, and you've got plenty of trips in there. Shopping, although I have to admit my husband, who works part-time, tends to do more of that. He's out at the shops right now on his lunch break. He goes into the office more, so he's got those work trips. What else? Thinking about weekends, more clubs, church, seeing friends, seeing family. So my family live relatively close in Coventry. My in-laws live in Devon, so that's more of a holiday thing. But things like that, really.
Yeah, I mean, that's really a summary, I think, of all our family lives, isn't it?
Yeah.
With that, or kind of going out and seeing friends in the evening. I also have the additional journeys I have to make, like going to the vets.
That reminds me, though, actually GPs for the don't often have to take children to the GP, but I am very very grateful we live close to us, because recently one of my teenagers has been having ear trouble, so we've had a few GP appointments. So that's another one to add into the mix.
Yeah, and I mean, you're in Birmingham, aren't you? So, I mean, I take it most of these things are within a reasonable distance from where you live?
Absolutely, and I think that was one of the main reasons to choose where we live. So before we lived in Birmingham, we lived in Cambridge, which was sort of a different experience, smaller city, but everywhere very compact, very walkable, very cyclable. When we moved to Birmingham, mainly because it was cheaper, and being back near a family for childcare, that was the main factor in where we decided to settle, was how close it was to my husband's work. I was freelance at the time, so I wasn't committed to a workplace. Schools, how close it was to primary schools, because our eldest was about to go to primary school. Things like GPs, shops. So absolutely, we chose a location of house based on, walking, cycling, public transport. Absolutely was part of that.
Yeah. So, I mean, you were saying you didn't use your car so much for day-to-day usage, so
No.
You're already mindful of that.
Neither of us have ever really wanted to be dependent on a car. We never really had the budget for it, so all the cars we've ever had have been second-hand old bangers, and living family life, particularly as we started to have more children, twins, no one plans twins to go from 2 to 4, that's budgeting there, right there. We've just never had that in our budget to spend lots of money on a car, and certainly didn't want the uncertainty of, if it breaks, like there's a massive bill. When we didn't live in Birmingham, it was mainly for getting out of town, so not in daily life for those longer trips to go from Cambridge back to the Midlands and Devon to see family. When we moved to Birmingham, same thing. I mean, I occasionally used it in the middle of the day for like the younger children. So if we were, I don't know, going to a soft play or something those days whilst the older ones were at school, then I probably did use it a little bit more with the twins, but not for those real like never things like school run work, you know, like the stuff you have to do every day. So yeah, I've never been into cars, and it's something we've never wanted to go down the route in terms of like finance and committing that money to a car.
Sure. So I think, you know, the average cost for families across the UK is about £3,500 a year, but that easily gets up to 7 to 12 in some cases if you're using a leased SUV. You know, these are very
not in our
expensive.
budget.
Yeah. You know, that over a year is, you know, these are huge amounts of money. I think on there was a IPPR report a little while back that put it as for about £108 a week is your average for running a car, whereas if you're not a car owner, it's down to about £13 a week on transport. Mm-hmm. You know, and when you know you think about people who are, you know, depending on where they live, they may well be forced to use a car depending on the types of days they have to do. I mean, for some of the poorer households, I mean, this is an easy sort of 25% plus proportion of their monthly income is just spent on transport.
Yeah, transport poverty is a real thing. People forced into car ownership, and I know, appreciate I have the privilege of being able to make these choices, but also it has been, you know, part of our choice of budgeting for a family, deciding what to spend the money we have on, and cars have just never been something we've wanted to prioritise. We could have done, but then we'd have had to have dropped something out. Like, if I wanted a car now, great, kids, we can have a car, but you can't go to those clubs. You know? Because
even a car that you don't use, it costs to sit there and do nothing, doesn't it?
The sunk cost thing, I think, when you've got a car sat on your drive or outside your house, every journey looks like a car journey. Whereas if you don't have that, you know, it makes you think about the alternatives. And sometimes we do use a car. We're very lucky to have a car club down the road, but I know that I can use that when I need to, and the cost factor, it's pay as you go. It's that mobility pay as you go, you know, like this is what we need now, and not having all that cost in one thing, and then I can make choices based on what is most appropriate at the time.
Yeah, when we did our tally, we realised we could do taxis several times a week.
Yeah, absolutely. You know. Yeah, no, I have no issue taking the old Uber because I'm like, well, it's fine.
Yeah. This is so much cheaper, and someone's driving you.
I know.
That's a lovely thing. Yeah, I mean, there's a thing of you know, the journey time as well, and something which is like so infrequently factored in when you like look at a route planner is the time to finding parking.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's not in there. No. Again, this is something they reckon it's an average sort of 6 to 10 minutes every journey you should add on for parking, for just finding parking at the other end. There's a study about 44 hours a year people spend searching for parking, which is days. That's days circling. I don't want to spend that time doing that.
No. I think as well, one of the things we have noticed in using the car less is the feeling of like any kind of connection with the environment.
I mean, I wouldn't say I've historically been an environmentalist or an activist or anything like that, but I think actually whilst getting into the space of trying to live a car-free or a car-light life, like it's made me more aware of those things, and something that I hadn't really thought of, you know, in my teens and early 20s before I had children, suddenly started to become much more obvious when I was slowing down. And, you know, I think becoming a mum made a huge difference to me in terms of thinking about the world I'm leaving for my children and bringing them up. You know, not everyone has the same experience, but that's certainly something I felt sort of going into my 30s and now 40s.
Yeah. What was the point then when you said, okay, this is probably a time to
give it a car? Well, we'd been thinking for a while, so so we sold it, and we kind of said, okay, it's a trial. We'll try without, see how it goes. We can't go anywhere at the moment, and we're now 26, so like 5 years later, and we've at some points we've kind of considered it, thought, oh, maybe we do need a car now, but we've always done the maths, we've always done a recce, and it's never got to a point yet where we've thought it would be useful. And actually probably the biggest factor is, if we needed a car to own, we would need one that would, say, take us all on to go and see the in-laws in Devon. That's probably the biggest journey that we would make. And to fit two teenagers and two 8-year-olds in a car, we're talking like a big 7-seater, maybe even one of those like 9-seater things. We don't have the budget for that, and I don't want to be driving that massive thing around Birmingham. It's totally impractical. So we've always kind of said, well, even if we were to get a car now, actually maybe we should just get a little one as a runaround if we do need the occasional thing. But no, that's not useful either, because we then won't be able to use it going down to Devon. So yeah, it's sort of, it's not like we ever behind. Or stick a kid on the roof rack or something like that.
There's always one who'd be happy with that.
Or one not to come or whatever, to come with you. But no, and I think it's that, I suppose what I'm trying to say is there wasn't really a particular point where we were like, right, no, we're gonna live without a car. It's always been the kind of those longer journeys, not the daily life. And then even when we think about those longer journeys, even now it's not really practical and within our budget to own a car to do those things. What I would love actually is if there were more car clubs or more sort of peer-to-peer sharing, that I could occasionally hire a massive 7-seater for a week. Yeah. Brilliant. I'd do that. And we do have a car club, but we can't all fit in it. So, it's not great from that point of view, but it is helpful for, when we're just taking the 8-year-olds or a teenager somewhere. So, yeah, it wasn't a specific point in time. It's been a kind of journey. No pun intended.
I guess for some other people, it's less of a choice, isn't it? They might have had a serious incident where they can't drive anymore.
Yeah.
Or, I suppose as you get to a certain age, the optician might say, you need to go without a car, and for that point, it's important that there are other options available
Absolutely.
For people who aren't using cars. So we do live in a city which is very much oriented around motor transport as like the primary means. So I do think it's important that options are given, not just for those who are choosing, but for those who don't necessarily have the choice.
Absolutely. And I think if we all had more choice, then, more people could see the benefits. In a way, we're sort of locked in that catch-22 of, people don't feel they have the choice but to own a car, and then there's more cars. So, it's sort of how to change the system so that it enables people to have that choice. And I've always been very open about that. I'm not expecting other people to do what we've done, but I like to just share that, there is a way, and actually if we have better system and we improve that system, then more people could see that.
Yeah, and I think there's also that thing of, even if you are someone who will never give up their car and they just love their car and they always want to drive it, that's fine, but the best case scenario for them is that everyone else stops, so they can still get around. So how do you get around on your daily tasks now then? Now you're not taking the car to school, to clubs, to how do you with 4 kids, 4 different clubs, surely how do you thread all that together?
Well, I think there's something to be said at the moment that we're just sort of learning more about as we go along, is teenage independence. And actually I think it's fantastic for our teenagers to be able to get the bus places on their own, and something I didn't really experience so much of as a teenager. I was very much driven a lot of places, and I think that's great for them. I think they have a really good sense of where they live, and obviously walking and cycling as well. But just having that independence. So that's a start. I don't go everywhere with them, and they're really getting that. But I guess it's sort of, a lot of it is the logistics, and you get into a mindset of planning, which seems like a lot when you first do it, but I think once you're so into the habit of doing it, it's so normal. And whereas for some people it's very normal to jump in a car and go, well, it's very normal for me to just get out a journey planner and think about the logistics of where I need to be when on which mode. And like you were saying about car parking, actually I did use the car club the other day to go, and I was doing a lift share for a scouts activity, and I'd never been to this scout hut before, but I went in a car because I was picking up other scouts as well, so that they could drop off mine. We were sharing it. And I thought, oh gosh, I'm so out of the habit of thinking, where am I going to park? I had no idea. So I had to then do that process, which I'm sure a lot of people just don't think of because they do it all the time. So for me, I think it's like, it's not necessarily harder to do what we do. It's just shifting a mindset to, this is what we do, and it's okay. And like we were just saying, to have the backup of, okay, maybe I need to occasionally take an Uber, but that's fine. It's on my phone. I can do it. But I guess if you're not in the process, the normal habit of doing that, then you don't think about that. But also a lot of walking. I think walking's so underrated, and I have no time to go to a gym or anything like that. But the amount of walking I do, it fits in that daily activity, exercise into my daily routine. And I think a lot of people could really benefit from that. We all say, oh, we don't have time to exercise, or we kind of spend lots on gym memberships that you never go to, or you sort of have a real spurt at the beginning and then life takes over. And for me, I think being able to fit in that exercise in daily routine, just from school runs and going to activities, is really great. Another thing about teenagers is having that time to chat, and I really appreciate that with them. So when I do walk with them places, obviously they're perfectly capable of walking on their own places, and they do a lot of the time. But last night I was like, I'm going to go and pick up my Explorer from Scouts, because I want to chat with him. I haven't seen him properly for a couple of days. Walking side by side with that, he opens up stuff that he would never do at home if I just walk into his room and go, hi, how's it going? Because he's a teenager, and that's really great. So there are totally benefits to doing things in another way. And I personally, I wouldn't be able to have that same chat in a car with him. I know some people say they can drive and chat at the same time. I'm not the person. I need to concentrate on the road.
I often felt like my son, when he was sitting in the back of the car, and he was younger, but he just kind of switched off for that time period.
Yeah.
Whereas now when we're, as you say, walking about and that sort of thing, and it's an engagement in the world around you.
Yep.
And as well, I find I chat to my neighbours so much more, because I'm not just getting out the house straight into a car and driving away. I'm walking past them. I'm inevitably kind of bumping into them, and you do the same journeys each day. You get into a routine, a rhythm, and a lot of other people are doing the same, and you'll see the same people around, and you just start building relationships in a way that you wouldn't necessarily otherwise.
Yeah. Definitely.
I think of it really as an exchange of conveniences in some way.
Mm-hmm.
So whereas before I would, be able to out the front door, into the car go, and I could get there quickly, and then searching around for a parking space, and trying to find where I'm going, or the things that I have to do in order to complete that journey, whether it's make sure I've stopped for fuel and built in the time to do that.
Yeah.
Whereas now I don't have that. There may be something where I have to do a bit more at the start, to walk to a bus stop or to order a taxi or something. But then if I'm just at the front door, I don't. There's a whole level of stress and problems that are actually removed by kind of removing what you think is a thing that's making your life easier.
Yeah. No, totally agree. And also the public transport thing, being able to do things whilst you're on that. So on the bus, I can do admin. On the train to work, I can work. If I drove that to work, I wouldn't be working in that time. So I've lost another half an hour of my commute, but I can work on the train.
And for our family holidays now, we put the train as part of the holiday.
Same here. Yeah.
And we get to spend that time, kind of playing games with my kid, or doing drawing and things like that, and it's quite a charming way of moving around.
Oh, I love it.
Really.
Yeah, we are definitely big train fans for holidays.
Yes. Okay. All right. Well, Ruth, thank you very much for your time, and
no worries. Thank you.